大家好，欢迎收看哥姐聊天下。今天我们来看看最近诺贝尔奖得主克鲁格曼对特朗普关税政策直言不讳的批评。在当今美国政治和经济学界，很少有人像诺贝尔经济学奖得主保罗·克鲁格曼那样对特朗普的政策和执政风格进行如此持续而尖锐的批评。作为纽约时报的专栏作家和普林斯顿大学的经济学教授，克鲁格曼以其深厚的经济学理论功底和敏锐的政治洞察力，成为特朗普政府最有影响力的批评者之一。从特朗普2016年首次当选到2024年重新入主白宫，克鲁格曼的态度始终如一，坚决反对特朗普的经济政策，警告其对美国和全球经济的潜在危害。他的批评涵盖了贸易战、货币政策、财政政策以及美国在国际社会中的地位等多个层面，构成了一套完整的反特朗普经济学论述。
The big promise by Donald Trump was that he was going to bring down prices and make America affordable again, and everything he's done is the opposite of that. So, if you were asking, imported goods are going up in price, and we're going to see a lot more than that of that. But vegetables are going up in price, and a little bit of that is tariffs, but a lot of that is farm workers are making themselves scarce because they're afraid that ICE will pick them up. If we're worried about housing costs, a lot of the construction industry is immigrant workers, and particularly the actual physical jobs, the guys actually up there on the roof, tend to be immigrants, many of them undocumented, and even the ones who are legal are afraid.
Ultimately, I think what really matters is the standard of living.
Yeah.
For Americans across the board. What are we doing to the standard of living? Are we improving it, or are we actually turning it down?
Oh, no, this is clearly all negative for the standard of living. You're making, when you put a tariff on, one way of putting it, the sort of standard economist, Econ 101 thing is, you're taking things that we do relatively badly and other countries do relatively well, and we're insisting that those things be done here, which raises costs, reduces our standard of living. If we look at the immigration policies, the really important thing about immigration in America is that the immigrants do not do the same jobs that native-born Americans do. They're very concentrated in a limited number of industries and occupations, which are very much complementary to the jobs that native-born Americans do. And by driving out the immigrants, we are reducing the productivity, reducing ultimately the living standard of the native-born workers. Consistent tariffs are bad, but not as bad as legend has it, right? Everybody's said Smoot-Hawley caused the Great Depression. That's not remotely true. And if you run even Trump's tariffs as they stand at the moment through a sort of standard model, they will reduce GDP by something like 0.5 percentage point in the long run. It's serious, it's bad, it does terrible things to U.S. credibility because we're breaking all of our agreements, but it's not a huge thing. What we've never had before is tariffs where nobody knows what the tariff rates will be next month, let alone, a year, 2 years from now. It's this complete, utter chaos. It's sort of the whims of the president, and then the question of whether the courts even allow him to do what he's doing, which wreaks havoc with business. Any investment a business makes right now has a good chance of turning out to be a really bad investment because the tariff rate isn't what you thought it would be.
What about margins for corporations? Because typically you might see it show up there. It's suggested that part of the reason we're not seeing tariffs is some of it's being absorbed by exporters, some by importers, and some by consumers.
The exporters are not absorbing very much. We have independent data on prices actually charged by foreign countries for their exports to the United States, and those have not gone down. So it does not look as if foreigners are absorbing a significant amount. It does look like U.S. businesses have so far absorbed a significant amount. Partly that's because they rushed inventory in, they rushed imports in to front run the tariffs. Partly because they're not sure if the tariffs are here to stay. They don't want to raise prices and alienate consumers until they have no choice. But no, it looks quite significant. And it's really important also to understand that, this is not William McKinley's world economy. This is not what Trump thinks it is. This is not a world in which you export manufactured goods and you export farm goods and that's it. This is a world of supply chains. complicated structures. And very many of the tariffs are actually being levied on inputs into U.S. manufacturing. So this is doing a lot to actually raise costs of U.S. businesses as well. So there isn't a lot of slack in the end. I'm enough of a, I may be kind of center-left, but I don't believe that businesses are making massive profits that can just be legislated away. So in the end, businesses won't be able to absorb them, and it's consumers.
What about the stated goals of President Trump, whether he's achieving them or not? One of them is actually protect or bring back manufacturing jobs onshore of the United States. Is that a sensible goal? And by the way, how is it affecting the auto industry? Because the auto industry supposedly is one of the beneficiaries of all this.
Yeah, the auto industry actually is sort of case in point for, this is not actually working. And it's for the auto industry, a lot of it has to do with the fact that there isn't a U.S. auto industry. There's a North American auto industry. It's very integrated with Canada and Mexico. Parts of an individual car may cross a border 7 or 8 times before you end up with a finished vehicle. And all of this stuff is adding costs. So the auto industry is particularly ill-suited. Steel and aluminum. What do you make cars out of? And we have tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Could there be an ironic, unintended effect, which is actually as you put more and more pressure on the costs for manufacturers, they automate more. So it doesn't turn into jobs. It might turn into GDP. It doesn't turn into jobs.
Well, just in general, even aside from the cost pressures specifically, if you ask yourself which industries might be induced to come back to the United States, it'll be industries where the labor cost disadvantage is not too large. We're not going to be bringing back apparel. There's just no way, unless you have just hundreds of % tariffs, that we're going to bring clothing manufacture back from Bangladesh to the Carolinas. What you can bring back conceivably are industries where they're very capital intensive. Robots do a lot of the work. So we may be creating more jobs for robots, but not a whole lot of jobs for U.S. workers.
There is the effect, apparently, we hear from Secretary Bessent on the deficit. That in fact we are putting a lot more money into the Treasury because of these tariffs. Is it helping us on the debt and deficit?
Well, the direct effect, look, tariffs are basically a tax. They're a sales tax that are levied on selected goods. It's a sales tax on goods that we import. And sure, if I put on a national sales tax, it would raise revenue and reduce the deficit. And, a lot of economists have said the United States really should have a value-added tax, which is basically a sales tax, and most other advanced countries do that, and we kind of could use the money. So through a backdoor route, Trump is making America a little bit more like Denmark with a sales tax paying for part of the but it's really not going to be enough money.
Secretary Bessent has said it's like $300 billion.
It's extremely unlikely that we'll get that much, although it's possible. If we're increasing tariff rates by around 15 points, that could get you to several $100 billion. But the idea that if you impose a tax, it raises money, that's not an exotic, that's not a policy triumph. That's just how budgets work.
Are you concerned about the long-term permanent effects of what's happening right now, rather than just the ups and downs, the vicissitudes of an electoral system?
What people don't, I think, fully realize is that on tariffs, almost everything Trump has done is probably illegal under U.S. law, but definitely a violation of international agreements. I mean, we built the world trading system, and I say we because that's the United States, the U.S. created this thing, which is a system of rules and laws. We've just ripped up a whole system of trading agreements, a system that we built over 90 years, because this really goes back to FDR. You don't put that back together, even if the next president says, okay, my first act is to undo everything Trump did, the United States will never be trusted again. We used to be a country where if we made an agreement, that was an agreement. I mean, I was in the Reagan administration working on trade things, and there would be meetings in which some proposal would be floated. And the guy from the U.S. Trade Representative's office would say that would be GATT illegal, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which binds this, and end of discussion. In the Reagan administration, if it was a violation of our international agreements, we didn't do it. This administration doesn't care. They don't even try to justify violating these agreements.
看完了这段视频，你有什么感想呢？现在我来深入分析克鲁格曼对特朗普的主要批评观点， 探讨这位诺奖得主为何认为特朗普的经济政策不仅愚蠢，而且会给美国和世界带来长远的损害。第一部分，克鲁格曼批评特朗普的核心观点概览。自特朗普2016年当选以来，克鲁格曼就成为了他最直言不讳的批评者之一。这种批评并非出于政治立场的分歧，而是基于深刻的经济学理论和对政策后果的专业判断。克鲁格曼的批评可以概括为4个核心维度。1. 贸易政策，从最烂策略到自掘坟墓。克鲁格曼对特朗普贸易政策的批评可谓不遗余力。他认为特朗普发动的贸易战代表了最烂的贸易战策略，这不仅是理论上的错误，更是实践上的灾难。在克鲁格曼看来，特朗普对国际贸易的认知极其有限，其关税政策既愚蠢又昂贵，堪称自掘坟墓式的经济决策。更为尖锐的是，克鲁格曼直言美国最终会在这场贸易战中失败，并公开表示中国彻底赢了他。这一判断不仅反映了他对特朗普贸易策略的深度质疑，也体现了他对中美经济关系走向的悲观预期。克鲁格曼认为，高关税政策最终损害的是美国消费者和企业的利益，而非贸易对手。2. 货币政策干预，通往津巴布韦化的危险道路。在货币政策领域，克鲁格曼对特朗普试图干预美联储独立性的做法发出了最严厉的警告。2025年，他明确指出，特朗普试图操控货币政策为个人政治目的服务，这种做法可能让美国陷入津巴布韦化的经济灾难。津巴布韦曾因政府过度干预货币政策而导致恶性通胀，最终货币体系完全崩溃。克鲁格曼使用这个极端案例来警示特朗普货币政策干预的危险性，特别是反对特朗普呼吁大幅降息的不负责任做法。他指出，历史上只有在深度经济危机时期才会采取如此极端的货币宽松措施。3. 政府治理，信誉的全面崩塌。克鲁格曼对特朗普政府治理能力的批评同样尖锐。他指出，特朗普政府发疯失控，对盟友和伙伴采取极端政策，系统性地摧毁了美国政府在国际社会中的信誉。这种信誉损失不仅体现在政策执行层面，更体现在政策制定过程的混乱上。在克鲁格曼看来，特朗普政府缺乏基本的政策制定流程，决策随意性极强，这使得国际社会难以与美国建立稳定的信任关系和合作机制。这种治理模式不仅损害了美国的软实力，也削弱了美国在全球经济治理中的领导地位。4. 社会政治影响，民主制度的深层危机。从更宏观的社会政治角度，克鲁格曼认为特朗普现象反映了美国社会的深层问题。他分析指出，支持特朗普的主要是城镇和乡村的白人群体，这种政治分化加剧了美国社会的撕裂。克鲁格曼担忧整个国家正在陷入失败状态，民主制度和法治精神遭到严重冲击。贫富分化的加剧，党派对立的极化，族群关系的紧张，以及美国国际地位的急剧下滑，都在特朗普执政期间得到了集中体现。这些问题的根源不仅在于政策选择，更在于政治文化和治理理念的偏差。